Welcome to Exit Algorithms, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to unlock growth, streamline operations, and prepare your business for high value exit. Today, John Solleder joins the show, bringing a deep experience in organizational consulting and workplace culture transformation, of course, as well as network marketing. John is a renowned speaker and author who covers leadership, motivation, and navigating organizational change. He's also written some best-selling books, including Corporate Culture in the Digital Era and his newer book, Equity. So, John, I'm so excited for this. Great to have you on the show.
Well, Peter, I appreciate it. It's a privilege. And thank you for your service to our country, by the way, as well.
Thanks, John. Thanks for your tax dollars.
Much is given, much is expected, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'd love to start off for people that don't know you. Do you mind sharing a bit about your background and maybe some of the experiences that led you to your work today?
Well, it's funny because I am not the stereotypical entrepreneur. I'm somebody who started life with the idea of having a job mentality. My parents had jobs. My father was a union electrician in New Jersey. My mother was a secretary. And what happened with me was kind of interesting. 1983, I had a succession of events happening. And if you don't mind, I'll spend a couple minutes just telling you what happened, because it happened very
Yep.
rapidly. It doesn't sound rapid right now. People are going, hey, 1983, is he going to go through 84 and 85? No, 83, and we'll jump forward. But in 83, it's funny. I was actually considering joining the United States Marine Corps. And I was being recruited by a guy who was a competitor in a sport that I was involved with at that time in what's called Sambo, Russian wrestling. And I was thinking I was going into Marine Corps, and I was in a tournament in Virginia. And after the tournament, I had a long discussion with this guy, and I said, I think I'm going to go into the Marine Corps. I come from a long line of military people, on both sides of my parents' families. And I thought that was going to happen. And then that following Wednesday, a guy who I had wrestled with in high school, who was a couple years older than me, came into the gym that I was working at. I was about to graduate college, just to give people some context. 1983, I'm about to graduate in May of 83. So this was April 18th, 1983. This guy comes in, and I said, hey, Tom, how are you? Blah, 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 a little small talk. And he says, hey, have you ever considered starting a business? And I'm like, no, my family doesn't start businesses. We work for other people. But he said, for $32, you can start your own business. And I said, well, as long as I can write you a hold check, not a hot check, but a hold check, because I don't have $32 in my checking account. Why would you like to do that, Tom? Yeah, sure. I'll buy this stuff. And I did that. And that night when I got home, I started to look through the materials that I had about 10 o'clock that. And by 4 o'clock in the morning on paper, I had become a millionaire. I got that excited about what I saw. And then fast forward, I started the actual process of business. On paper, it's real easy, as you know. On paper, it's like, yeah, everything works fine. The reality is when you start dealing with human beings and all the other logistics and all the other challenges that occur in business. But anyway, long story short, April 18th, 83, start that business, $32 investment. And May 18th, 1983, I'm about to graduate college. And then President Reagan is our commencement speaker. I went to Seton Hall University in South Orange, New Jersey, and Reagan was going to be our commencement speaker. And I was not a Reagan fan at that time, by the way. Come from a long line of union people as well. And he had been a Democrat and became a Republican, and he fired the air traffic controller. So I was not a Reagan fan based on my family's politics. Anyway, President Reagan gets up to speak, Peter. It was the most amazing thing. I felt like he was talking just like you and I are, just like two guys talking. Yet there's 4,000 people in the audience between Secret Service, press, parents, kids, teachers, etc. And Reagan said two things that stuck with me. Number one, he spoke about the then fall of East Germany. The East German people wanted what the West German people had. Everything from choices in food, choices in beverage, choices in clothing, choices in movies, etc. And that they were going to knock that Iron Curtain down, which they eventually did. And that was very, very compelling. But it was the second thing he said that got him. And that was that 1932 when he graduated college that the economy was tough. 1983, the economy was tough. 1932, the
Yeah.
economy was tough. Depression era. And lo and behold, he talked to an entrepreneur at the swimming hole where he had been a lifeguard the previous summer. And in that conversation, he said, "What do you do to be successful?" He's asking this older entrepreneur. And the guy said, "Well, it's real simple." He said, "You find somebody who can teach you a business that you're passionate about." Well, in Reagan's case, it was broadcasting. He became a broadcaster for the Chicago Cubs minor league baseball team there in Illinois. And one thing led to another. Westinghouse heard and went up in California. And as they say, the rest is history. When President Reagan said those words, I said, the last 30 days, I've been being mentored by this company that I had joined. It actually had a company called Herbalife in California. And I had learned some skills that I didn't have before about talking to people, about selling, about business that I had never gotten. And by the way, I never got this in 4 years of college either. And I also made $800. And $800 in 1983 was a lot of money because nobody used credit cards. So when I said $800, I had $800 in my wallet. Now I paid for some product out of that, so it wasn't pure profit, but it was cash flow. And I said, fast forward 30 days roughly after that, I went to my first ever real business meeting. It was in Hartford, Connecticut. And a guy named Larry Thompson had a quote from Jim Rohn. And I had no idea who any of these people were at that time, by the way. And this Rohn quote was, for things to change, you have to change. And for things to get better, you have to get better. And all of a sudden, I recognized in myself that I was making a lot of excuses. You know, I was born on the wrong side of the tracks. I didn't come from money. I didn't come from business people, for that matter. I came from people who had jobs. I made all these excuses. And I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make myself the brand, not the companies I represent. And I've over the years represented a number of different companies in network marketing and also insurance industry, some fine companies, great companies. But at the end of the day, I worked on me. Because when I heard that wording, I started to go to the free public library, most of which was funded by another great entrepreneur, Andrew Carnegie. Okay. And I started to go to the library and I started to read Earl Nightingale, Mary Kay, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, all these great orators at the time, most of which were still alive at that time, who had written about self-development. Now, I didn't call it self-development back then. Okay. But they each had their story and everything else. And lo and behold, I recognized that this was an inside job. If I was to be successful in my life, I needed to change my attitude. My work ethic was already there. I was not lazy. However, I saw the world in a different way than as a grand opportunity. I saw everything with limitation. And all of a sudden I started, well, what can I do if I get to work on me? And I've continued that path for 43 years in April.
Wow. Yeah. Man. So, okay. So 83 to now. Okay. So can we go in a little bit about the rise here? What were there some key points that saw the uptick of your career?
Yeah. Here's a couple of things. Number one, I learned that you test everything small. You don't do big tests. For example, I put together a mailing piece in 1997 about a product for the immune system that was developed at McGill University. And I mailed out 1,000 copies of this letter. And it had a thing called a bounce back card in those days, right? People would fill out a card and they stick it back in the mail, like in a self-addressed envelope that would come back to me. And then I would get it. They were interested. And I'd mail them a cassette tape that I did about this particular brand. And what I found was that that first 1,000 mailings, I got 300 responses, which is 30%.
Yeah, pretty good.
Now, if I had gotten 2%, I would have been happy. But I got like 300 people. Now, all of those people that enjoyed my business, they didn't buy my product, but they were interested in a freebie. Okay, you're going to mail me a free tape, which I did. Okay, and then followed up. And some of those people did join my business. And the funny part is, 29 years later, some of those people, I still make money from their efforts in the company that we helped to put together at that time. I did similar things for other companies along the way. But when I say test small, a small test is going to tell you what a big test is going to tell you. So don't spend a lot of money. Don't go buy the back page of USA Today and run an ad. Run an ad in your local paper, for example. Do a flyer, do a tear tag flyer, do guerrilla marketing and find out, hey, am I getting a response? Are people calling me or these days texting me or emailing me or whatever way that you want them to contact you? Are you getting contacts out of what you do? So that small test is going to tell you what a bigger test is going to do. Well, long story short, with that first test with that company, all of a sudden I had a bunch of people join me because I started to share those results. And all of a sudden we grew a company. And today, the fact that glutathione is sold all over the world by a lot of different companies, we helped to create the education of the consumer with that particular brand. Okay. And now there's multiple brands doing the same thing. But at the end of the day, it was the fact that, we started with something nobody really knew about. Okay. The medical profession knew about it. Layman didn't know about it. And that grew. I did a similar thing with creatine before that. The first creatine was really brought over here from the Soviet Union. It was used by the Soviet athletes. And then during the fall,
muscle growth.
During the fall of the old Soviet Union, you had all these great scientists. Well, they could go to other places. They could go to Europe, obviously, but a lot of them came here to America. And Dr. Nikolai Volkov, who was the guy, when you look at the research, who really did the research on creatine, we worked with him back in the early 90s to help bring creatine to the marketplace. Same type of thing. Small tests to start. Eventually, we wound up working with everything from Olympic athletes to professional athletes, using it, getting results. And then, of course, a weekend warrior looks and says, well, if I can't name the athletes for different reasons, but at the end of the day, if XYZ athlete is using it, well, my kid that's wrestling ought to use it, or my high school quarterback son ought to use it, or better yet, I better use it for recovery. So I've worked with some really interesting products over the years, and I've always wound up being the guy that says, how do we take this to the market and make it make sense to the consumer so we can get some people using the product and get some results and some testimonials to prove the point that the product actually works? Because if it works in a laboratory, great. But if it works in a human being, all the more better, as long as it's a safe, efficacious product. So that's the kind of stuff that I've done through the years. Still doing it. I write copy for a number of different companies nowadays. It's one of the things that I do is actually copy for other people. They pay me to, basically help them to get their brand awareness and all that sort of thing. So that's what I've been doing for a lot of years, but I've always been self-employed. Along the way, I've dabbled in the insurance business. That's a long story, but my first multi-level business in trouble with the FDA in about early 85. I needed a job. I went to work for Metropolitan Life. Another great way to learn. The insurance business teaches you so much about finance. And it opened my eyes to the fact that even way back then, I'm about in my 20s, you better start saving for retirement young. Because if you wait to 65 to do it, too late. Okay. That ship is sailed. So it taught me a lot of economic lessons, the insurance business. Got back in the insurance business a few years ago, not for financial need. I'm sort of making enough money, but I got back into it because I got interested in final expense insurance and wills and trusts. Something else we dabbled in our business is helping people make sure that they have a will, because statistically 76% of people don't, which is amazing.
Wow.
And if you die without a will, you got the probate court to deal with. That's a nightmare for your spouse or your children or your grandchildren. We started to dabble in that once again out of need. People kept asking me, what do I do? What do I do? What do I need? Well, you need a final expense plan and you need a will. And it was amazing to me how many of my friends said to me, well, I don't have either. And I'm saying, but you're making six figures. How do you not have? Well, we were gonna, and we didn't. It's on our list. Well, let's move it from the list to be proactive. And some haven't.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. It's crazy. I love your story. It's funny. I started my path also with self-help genre, and Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, got me started. I think I read that. I was like 9 years old. But yeah. And then Jim Rohn, I love that. This one saying he's got is, the major key to your better future is you. And that stuck with me from a very early age as well. Just, taking responsibility for your circumstances, being brutal,
I worked with a guy who had done some writing for Jim. And when I'm doing that whole creatine thing, and Jim and I went to lunch with these two guys. And during the course of the lunch, we're talking, and he looks at me, and I'm about 35 at the time. The other two guys were in their 50s, and he looks at the three of us, and he looks back at me, and he says, you always call you by your last name, Mr. Solleder, I can still help you. These two guys are a lost cause. And I knew what he meant. I went to my car, and you would have thought I was Usain Bolt. I sprinted to my car. I came back in the restaurant we were eating lunch at with my day timer. What they call day timer, whatever you want to call it, or way to take notes. And he used to wear his glasses on his head like this, And he said, listen, he said, John, at the end of the day, it's not so profound what I'm going to say or what these other two guys are going to say. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What if the waiter comes over and says something so life-changing and you don't write it down? And tonight you start thinking, what did that waiter say? And you come back to the restaurant tomorrow and the waiter quit. Or better yet, you say to the waiter, what did you say exactly yesterday? And the guy looks at you like, I don't know. Because a good idea, Jim's point was, a good idea can come from anybody. It came from the waiter. McDonald's incorporated an idea from a young man who was discarding the trash nightly who was in high school. The reason McDonald's started their breakfast business was this young guy said, why are we throwing out these rolls every night? Seems like an awful waste of money. Why don't we make egg sandwiches? And he wrote a letter to Ray Kroc, and his people said, yeah, that's a great idea. So today McDonald's is in the breakfast business, and they weren't at one time because this young guy pointed out something that was pretty obvious, I think. But whenever he did, and I don't know the time frame that he did that in, I read it in Ray Kroc's book. Whenever he did that, they weren't doing that. And all of a sudden, this young guy had a good idea. By the way, he gave a scholarship of $25,000, which at the time was probably a lot of money for a good idea. Okay, so they rewarded people for using their brains, which is a good thing to do. When you look at all business, success leaves clues. And if you drill down, there's always those stories. There's always that person. It's not always, wow, this brilliant CEO. Well, a brilliant CEO listens to his people.
Yeah,
because you don't know where that next idea is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. You got to meet him, and we could take this conversation in a lot of directions. I'm sure. I was curious though, in your background. So, what are some common levers for growth in a business that you consult with?
First thing is to think on paper. And I tell people today, with all the great technology, you still need to think on paper. Think on paper. Why do you think on paper? There's a connection, a biochemical connection between the mind and when you write. And ideas come. The old Ben Franklin balance sheet, if your listeners aren't aware of that, the old Ben Franklin balance sheet's real simple. Pros and cons. Right? Draw a line down the middle of the paper, right? Pros, cons. Any decision you're going to make, from who your spouse is going to be, to what business you're going to start, to what are you going to go vertical within your business, right? What are the pros and cons? What's it going to cost? What's the human cost? What, et cetera, et cetera. You put all of those things on paper, and all of a sudden, this magical thing that the good Lord put in our heads called a brain, okay, all that gray matter starts to go to work. Now, as an entrepreneur, sometimes it goes to work at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you wake up, and you're probably finding this building a business on your end. You wake up at the weirdest times with a thought. When you wake up with that thought, write it down. Because if you go back to sleep, that thought might be gone. You might think, wow, I had a great idea at 3 a.m., but at 8 a.m., I have no idea what it was. So I learned that along the way. Just write stuff down. Hey, if you wake up, go back to sleep, okay? But wake up and write it down, because you may not be able to capture it the next day, okay? But thinking on paper would be number one, I would say. Number two is I've always had a core group of people on ideas. For example, tomorrow I'm having lunch with my original mentor and his wife, who's now 81 years old. The guy who said, for things to change, you got to change. We're having lunch with him and his wife tomorrow. Now, why is that? We're working on some ideas together in terms of some strategies within some businesses, my business, their business, et cetera, that we might use a common vendor for, that can do some things for us, some LinkedIn advertising, some TikTok advertising, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to analyze, where do we start if we use this particular vendor? So once again, we'll be thinking on paper. we'll be eating lunch, we'll be enjoying, visiting. How are you? MC each other's just the holidays, blah, blah, blah. But we'll be thinking on paper in terms of what do we do or what do we not do? Maybe we just say, hey, we don't like this vendor. We'll move on. We had a similar conversation about a vendor a couple months ago, and we decided just didn't like the guy. Wasn't giving us the right information.
Yeah.
Okay. But I want to put a core group of people around me because you can't figure it out all yourself. I call it a core group. Other people call it a think tank. Call it what you want. Different people. Napoleon Hill had his mastermind groups, et cetera, et cetera. So, but for some reason, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to be the decision maker in your business. But a smart person takes the input of other smart people. If for nothing else to say, I didn't think of that, because you can't think of it all. Yeah. And sometimes you can't see it all. You think you're seeing what you need to see, but you're going, wow, I didn't think of that. What's the downside? What's the upside? What's the cost factor? I mean, all of those things are levers in the business. Okay. And then the third thing I think is that when you decide to go, you go. My success has been predicated on 90-day plans. For 90 days, because I got ADHD like on steroids. All right. I mean, I'm like a pinball machine. Okay. So at the end of the day, what I learned along the way about myself is if I'm going to focus on something, I got to say, okay, if I'm starting this February 1st till May 1st, put my head down on this particular idea or strategy, tactics, doesn't mean it's not going to morph and it's not going to go, there's not going to be turns and twists because that's business. But at the end of the day, it's like, what is the outcome that I want? Now I got to work backwards. I take 90 days and commit to that process of doing whatever it is that I'm endeavoring to, whether it's I'm growing my check in my multi-level business, whether I'm expanding my insurance business, whether I'm expanding my will and trust business, whether I'm, back on my traditional, diet after Christmas, for example, getting the weight down, weighing myself every couple of days, et cetera, whatever it happens to be that is important to you. 90-day increments. The mistake people make as entrepreneurs sometimes is they want immediate success. That's not realistic. And you look at Shark Tank. Shark Tank's a great show. It's a great show. Yeah. And you look at any of those people, they're all incredibly successful, but none of them were overnight. You listen to Damon John, for example, listen to his story. It took him for a long time. Mark Cuban, I know Mark Cuban's story. Mark Cuban's college roommate was my very dear friend, Arlene Lowy's brother. I know his story. His dad, cool. His dad was a bus driver in Pittsburgh. He delivered newspapers. I know where he started. He's built this business. But I can go through a lot of different examples of successful entrepreneurs. Point being, every one of them made a commitment to, there's going to be some high level moments where we're thinking, wow, we got it. And then there's going to be those low level moments. Here's the other key thing there. I look at people like Tom Landry, for example. Tom Landry, you did not know whether the Cowboys were winning the Super Bowl by 4 touchdowns or getting their butts kicked. Yeah. He was a very level-headed individual. You look at great coaches in just about anything in athletics, which very level-headed people. They don't get too high. They enjoy the moment when they win. I'm sure Coach Signetti's having a good time today. Okay. The Miami coach probably isn't. But at the end of the day, he knows he's got to recruit a whole bunch of new guys for next year. So that high will last today and he'll enjoy it. But tomorrow he's probably back in the office, back to work. Well, it's no different as an entrepreneur. Okay? You do something that it works and ink striking paper and it's selling and it's working. You don't go on vacation.
Yeah.
What do? You go back to the office and say, okay, we got to continue where we're at. And now how do we expand it? How do we grow it? You got to be asking yourself in business all the time, how do I grow what I'm doing? How do I increase it? Is it more advertising? Is it more promotion? Is it more employees? Depends on the business, obviously. But at the end of the day, those are some of the levers that I use. And the other one I use is just real simple. And that's, if it's to be, it's up to me. Okay. Now I'll refine that a little bit. Okay. Because I do believe that God has dominion over what we do. Doesn't mean he's going to say, well, John's going to be super successful, but Bob's going to live under a bridge. But I do believe he blesses our work if we work hard. I do believe there's rewards for working hard, but there's also rewards for working smart in that hard. use that, that brain that he gave us, okay, to figure it out. And then the other thing I look at is saying, if other people have been successful doing what I'm doing, I'm going to study them. I'm going to ask them questions. I'm going to be a pest. I've always invested in my education. Now I have a formal education. I'm a number of degrees from universities, but at the end of the day, when I get into any type of a business situation, I will spend the money to go to the seminar. I will spend the money to go to the conference. I will study what that individual or that team or that company or that brand or whatever is doing successful. Because if I want to emulate it, I don't have to invent it. Especially these days, I just need to duplicate it.
Right. Yep.
I don't need to change. I just need to duplicate. So those are some of the lessons. I mean, there's a lot more than that, but those are some of the lessons I've learned over these 43 going on 43 years. Hard to believe, 43 years in April.
Yeah. Oh, John, thank you. There are tons of good nuggets there. Yeah, success leaves clues. I love that. Yeah, condensing it into a 90-day roughly chunk. I recently dove into the book, The 12-Week Year. Not sure if you read that one. But yeah, I think you can really compress time basically by doing that. And yeah, testing
And celebrate at the end.
and celebrate at the end.
Celebrate at the end. And go 90 days, and wherever you're at, analyze, celebrate it. Maybe that means you take the wife for a long weekend somewhere. Maybe it means you do whatever. But celebrate it, analyze it.
Yeah.
Got to analyze it. It's funny. I've worked with so many great entrepreneurs, including several that are in the $1 billion category. They're all about analytics. They look at what they're doing, and they're testing, they're refining, they're advancing, but they're also looking at the numbers to say, is the rubber meeting the road on what I did here? And then celebrate. Take a few days off, blow it off. Just erase it from your mind. Go surf. You live near the beach. Go surf. Go do something else for a couple of days, and then come back and say, okay, now what's next?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You can't improve what you don't measure. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I talked to a lot of small business owners, and one consistent theme, a lot of them don't have a solid management place and team in place to run the business without them. And when they gear up to sell, of course, that becomes an issue because a lot of they're the bottleneck of the business. Do you have any recommendations for maybe a business owner in that situation, trying to have the business be more or less dependent on them? What are some steps they would take?
Hire the right people. Hire slow, fire fast. You got to hire slow. You get the right person. They're worth it. Make the investment in them. But if they're not the right person, let them go. It's hard to do that sometimes. But I've had to learn that the hard way because there's people I'd really liked that I've had to let go over the years. And there's people I haven't liked that much that kept working because they're good at what they do. Are they good at what they do? My fundamental question is, are they the best at what they do? Are they good at what they do? Are they committed to what they do? Are they committed to the process? If they are, I'll probably stick with them a little bit longer. But if they're not committed, I'm not going to be committed to them because there's somebody else out there willing to take their place. The proverbial in the NFL next man up. There's always the next man or next woman up that's willing and hungry to do what it is that I need them to do.
Sure. Hire slow, fire fast. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's hard sometimes for people to find the right person that they can trust to actually keep up the quality of the work. Right. I think that a lot of people run into that issue. Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for that process of hiring?
I would say read the book Built to Last by Jim Collins, Dr. Jim Collins.
Jim Collins, yeah.
That book would be, if you do the comparisons of the great companies versus the good companies, putting the right butts in the right seats on the bus.
Yeah.
Difficult, necessary, The great companies do it. The good companies don't do it.
Mm.
Good companies employ their friends. The great companies employ the people that can do the job.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's absolutely a consistent theme. I just re-listened to, I don't know if you've read that book by Brad Jacobs, How to Make a Few $1 billion. It's like his memoir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
He talks about A, B, and C players. And that's influenced me quite a bit. You know, if it's an A player, and he says he's quitting, then you're gonna be scrambling, right? Versus a B player says quitting, you're like, that hurts, but I'll be able to find someone eventually. And if it's a C player, you're like, oh, like, okay, oh well, I was gonna have to fire you anyway. So like that thought experiment, you can kind of go through your employees and keep that in mind during your hiring process. I think that would be, uh, yeah, helpful.
and I got to say this: don't get too close to people.
Mm.
Okay, and that sounds terrible. Now let me clarify that. Okay, if I get too close to them, and then I can't make the right business decision about whether they're a right person or not. Like I had to let somebody go yesterday on something, for example. Okay,
Mm.
I was kind of a friend. But I was honest with him. What he's doing is not performing for me. He's not an employee of mine. He's a service. I'm just like, what you're doing, I'm paying you for. I'm not getting any results because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. He doesn't have the people in place that he needs to have in place because he doesn't want to spend the money. Well, why should I spend money with you? Because I got 12 guys that do what you do,
Yeah.
that do have staffs that I can call and ask a question, or my wife can, okay, or my business partners can. So at the end of the day, why should I keep you? Because we've had a couple of cups of coffee together. Well, I like you. We can still be friends. We can still talk about football. But at the end of the day, you're not performing in business because you don't want to invest in your own company. Why should I remain a customer? So sometimes you got to fire a vendor, and sometimes you got to be willing to make a difficult decision when you like somebody. So I try not to get too close to people. I learned this from a guy named Charlie Regis years ago. Don't get too close to people in your business because you can make the wrong decisions. Sometimes you have to make a business decision, and business is business. Friendship's friendship. We can still be friends. I have friends, by the way, that I don't do business with. That are in my
For
business.
that reason.
Yeah, just for that reason. It's like, hey, I can still be friends with this person or that person, but I gotta draw the line when it comes to business because that's the way I keep score. And I've made a number of mistakes over the years keeping people around that were Dracula. They were sucking not only energy but also money, and they weren't performing.
Yeah.
And then I'm saying, well, but there's somebody else that can perform, so I got to pay people who can perform.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Drawing that line there, that is definitely, tough to do. And you gotta make the decision based on like the KPIs, like we were talking about, based on numbers and very unemotional. Yeah. Elon Musk is notorious for that. Uh, and gets some flack for it, but he builds incredible companies. You know, it's balance, I think, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and one of the themes for this show is technology, implementing technology in business. I'd love to hear your perspective, having built a successful career over the years, seeing from that '80s, pre-internet to where it is now in AI. Love to hear your thoughts on that. And are you using AI today?
I use AI every single day. Everything from helping with my podcasts to helping with my recruiting, to helping with my direct mail campaigns, to helping with my direct response campaigns.
Sure.
I use it for everything. It's the greatest singular tool in business history to date. There'll probably be something down the road different than it. I started to only use it about a year ago. Well, about a year and a half ago now. Then I actually started to really use it in any serious way. And since we started, it's like, how do I live without this? And it reminds me of when I got a fax machine 30 years ago. I was running an ad. I was living in New York, and I was running an ad in Montreal to recruit some people. And I got a fax. Okay, and it was in my kitchen, and it came out of the fax machine all like garbled, right? And I read this, and it was a guy I recruited who I still make money off of the business he built 30 years later. And the funny part is that I said to my wife, I said, how have we lived without this machine? And to me, that's AI today. Okay. Yeah. If you're not using AI, it's like not having a cell phone. How do you not have a cell phone? You break down at 3 o'clock in the morning. Who are you going to call? I don't have a cell phone. Good luck. Maybe a cop will pass you. What if you're on a road in South Carolina and there's crocodiles or something? You know what I mean? Like, you better have a cell phone. It's the same thing with AI. It's a necessary part of your business. Here's the nice thing, because I'll be 65 shortly. You do not have to become an expert in it, but you can use it for what you need to use it for. You need to become a machine learning engineer to use it.
Sure.
It's that well designed. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of it. I'm a huge proponent of it. I tell everybody my age and younger and even older, you better use it or lose it.
Yep. AI or die.
AI or die.
Yeah. I definitely agree. Even in, traditionally less tech forward businesses, logistics is one of them, but yeah, service-based businesses, there's all kinds of applications with AI agents nowadays taking calls at all times, not dependent on a human, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time. Have you seen any difficulties with businesses that you've consulted with as far as change management or adopting new technology or software?
Yeah, if it's an older company, sometimes there's a rejection of technology. They don't want to use it because they feel like they're going to be replaced. They don't realize that they're going to be enhanced, and that eventually AI is going to replace a lot of jobs. It already is. At the end of the day, if you embrace it and you understand it, and you understand how to use it, make yourself look better to whoever you have to look better to, that's an advantage. It's not a disadvantage. So it's just, once again, it's how somebody sees something. Look, we all have a termination. Okay, whether it's death or whether it's replacing a job or a business. So AI is going to replace a lot. Okay, it doesn't have to replace you if you understand how to use it and how it functions and where it can enhance whatever it is and whatever value you bring to your particular role.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And that, with people increasingly relying on AI, the face-to-face, authentic, just human connection element, I think, is becoming even more and more valuable in the marketplace.
Extremely.
Yeah. I always like to ask guests this to get different perspectives. Where do you see technology going in business over the next 10 years?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one, I think the international aspect of business will increase. I think the ability to do business internationally from your phone using AI is going to dramatically change how people grow businesses. Look at a lot of young entrepreneurs, they run their entire businesses from their cell phone. They don't need to be any place. They could be on vacation. They can be on an island somewhere. They can be in the middle of wherever. I look at countries like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Philippines, as emerging economies, okay, as a result, because their people are learning AI. They're young people in particular. These countries have a lot of young people that are using AI successfully and learning exactly what American kids can learn. I think that's going to change the world quite a bit. And I also think that the emerging markets, your Venezuelans, your Cubas, Mexico to some degree, Colombia, et cetera, those economies, because once again, they're generally, for the most part, they got some political problems in some of those countries, but at the end of the day, their people are embracing technology. So as the world embraces technology, the world gets smaller, not bigger. So, once again, you could do business all over the world from your telephone. You couldn't always do that. The AI is just going to make that easier and easier and easier as the different components of it roll out.
Yeah, excited. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like global marketplace, it's like, similar how the internet impacted the whole world and making it smaller. I think it's just going to expand upon that, right?
Well, it's like Bill Gates said way back. It's like, you're either going to have a website or you're going to be out of business. That was like 25 years ago. And he was right.
Mm.
I mean, can
Yeah.
you picture a business today that doesn't have a website? You have a website. I have a website. We're just two guys. Right? We have websites that people go, oh, okay, who is this guy? Right. So, I mean, could you picture a business that says, I don't have a website? And maybe in certain industries, you might be able to get away with that, but for the most part, you can't.
Yeah.
So why,
Yeah.
so why fight it? The same thing with AI. Don't fight it. Embrace it. Once
Mm.
again, you don't have to become an expert in it. I have a son who's becoming an engineer. Okay. And look, that's an asset of mine. I got a really smart kid, but at the end of the day, he's not always available. So I can't lean on him to teach me things. So what do? I get on this box over here and I type away and I read this, I listen to that, I listen to this podcast, I listen to this expert, and I learn as I go. And once again, just like in all of my businesses, I was willing to spend the time and the money to learn from other people. Same thing with AI, spend the time to learn and then apply it to your particular business, whatever it is that you're doing. Okay. It's an application science. So use it for what makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And test, right? Start small, test, iterate.
Right. I give you a perfect example of that too, Peter. I'm not a car guy. Okay. I mean, I've had some fancy cars, but for the most part, I'm not a car guy. Okay. 8-cylinder, 6-cylinder, if somebody says, well, that's an 8-cylinder or 6-cylinder, I go, okay, I'll take your word for it. And yet there was a time in my life I sold 21 cars in a month working in a car dealership in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And I'm not a car guy. And you say, how did you do that? Because I sold the car on the color, the air conditioning. Were you comfortable sitting in it? Did you like the interior, et cetera, et cetera? Follow? Somebody said, well, exactly how many blah bars does the engine get? I have no idea. Well, to me, that's AI. It's like, do I need to understand every single thing of how it works? No, I just need to understand that it works. Just like that car. You turn the key, you like the car, it drives smoothly, you buy the car. You don't like the way it moves, you don't buy the car. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really important to keep it simple. Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah. I know we're coming up on time here, but I wanted to give you the floor. I'd love to learn a little bit about your book, Equity, and maybe if you could share just one practical tip for a small business owner building equity in themselves or in their company.
Mm-hmm. Well, in equity, in all of my books, I've written a series of books called Moving Up also, and Leave Nothing to Chance. And I've written a lot of books and a lot of short books, but in equity, the idea is real simple. Okay. Own what you do. And I don't mean own it from a legal standpoint. Of course, I mean that. What I mean is own it that it becomes part of your identity. Okay. And that your equity is what you contribute to your business. Okay. That you put everything that you are into that business. Okay. So when somebody looks at that business, they say, I identify that business as Peter's business or John's business or Mary's business, because I see that personal commitment to excellence. Commit to excellence. Everything that you do. It's not important to do a lot. It's important to do what you do and do it well. If you're the local florist, don't be selling widgets in your business. Sell the best. Valentine's Day is coming up, right? Sell the most beautiful roses. Have the availability. Okay, so when somebody comes in, they go, "Well, my wife likes white roses." Make sure you got them. You know what I mean? Those little things that in a business somebody identifies and says that's equity that you bring to the marketplace, where you become known as that business in that particular sector of the economy in your community or even on the internet that does things excellent. I think of excellent companies. Rolex is an example of a company of equity. When you say Rolex, you go, wow, it's identifiable. Mercedes-Benz, Porsche. We can go down a list of different companies that you go, well, they stand for excellence. That's what you want to endeavor. Can't always get there, but that you have to endeavor for that. Not, oh, well, I just need to make a living. Well, just making a living, that's not good enough. If you're in business and your name's on the door, you got to do the very, very best that you can. You know, Jim,
Hmm.
Jim Rohn used to talk about the fact that even in his older years, he was always working in his game,
Hmm.
always working at it, always reading, always studying, always listening to what other people were doing. And that's what we need to be. I look at Warren Buffett in his later years, 90, whatever he is, 95 now, whatever he is. Guy's still going strong. The guy's a model. His partner, Charlie Munger, was a perfect example of equity. A week
Hmm.
before he died, Becky Quick interviewed him. And the
Hmm.
guy knew every single number on different companies that she would bring up. He'd say, well, this is what their valuation is. This is what their stock price is. This is what we think they're going to do, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we got to do.
Yeah. Continual growth and progress. Yeah.
Absolutely. 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 Okay.
Love it. Yeah. Well, amazing insights today, John. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Where's the best place listeners can find you at?
YouTube, my YouTube channel, John Solleder, my name, is one place, or you can go to johnsolleder.com and you can reach out to me as well.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. I'll leave those in the show notes as well.
Great. And Peter, love to have you as a guest on our show. So I'll have my wife of all these years and my partner and my boss. They send you an email. We'll get you on our show as well.
Sounds good. Happy to come on.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, John.